Okay, so now let's look at how we solve quadratic equations. So the first thing we need to do is turn the quadratic into a format like this. So this is what's called the standard form, and it's including something times an x squared plus or minus something times an x plus or minus a constant or just a number, and that should be equal to 0. So what does that mean in an example? So here we have x squared minus x equals x minus 3. This is a quadratic because we've got a square on the x, and we've got some x's as well, but there's two different terms, so we want to regroup them together, and we also want to bring the number over to the left to have everything equal to 0. So to do that, we subtract the right hand side, move it over to the left, and then we expand that and regroup the x's to get x squared minus 2x plus 3. So in the formula we saw earlier, the a is equal to 1 here, and a is often 1 in the GMAT. It tends to be in the harder questions where you don't have a equals 1, so pay attention to that. B is minus 2, and C is plus 3. So the signs are very important here. Now, what do we do next? So once we've got it in that format, what we want to do is divide everything by a. And there are some shortcuts to this. We'll see them in a second. But in the cases where a is not equal to 1, we want to still have effectively 1 in front of the x squared. So it means that we're going to divide everything by a, and then these coefficients here become b over a and c over a. Now, then what we're going to do is we're going to factor the equation by looking for two numbers, which we're going to call m and n here, that when you multiply them, you get this c over a here. And when you add these two numbers, so the same numbers m and n, you get the b over a here. Now, this may seem a little bit complicated, but we'll see some examples in a second. But when we do that, effectively, we turn the equation into a format like this. So x plus m in parentheses equals, x plus m times x plus n equals 0. And that actually gives us our solutions, but where we have to be a little bit careful is that the solutions are the opposite signs of m and n. Why? Because in order for this to be 0, we need one of these parentheses to be 0, because when you multiply something by 0, you get 0. And in order to be for x plus m to be 0, then you need x to be equal to minus m, not plus m. And the same for minus n, not plus n. So let's see an example here. It will be easier. So in this case, it's already in the format that we wanted. Ax squared plus bx plus c. A is 1 in this case, b is minus 2, and c is minus 3. So here, what we need to do is we need to look for two numbers that when we multiply them, we get minus 3, and when we add them, we get minus 2. Now, in the GMAT, you very rarely have complicated solutions to a quadratic. So you should always think first about round numbers. You want to avoid thinking, okay, if you multiply two numbers to get minus 3, you could do that by doing something like, I don't know, minus 1.3 times 2 point something. But that's very unlikely to be the answer in the GMAT, right? So in most cases, it's going to be simple round numbers. So in this case, the numbers that come to mind could be minus 3 and 1. It could also be minus 1 and plus 3. But we also have this other condition, which is when we add them, we get minus 2. And in that case, the only ones that work are going to be minus 3 and 1. Now, what does that mean? Well, we can then factor the equation to get it in this format. And then we have to not forget that the solutions are the opposite signs of that. So in this case, it would be x equals 3. Oh, sorry. X equals 3 or x equals minus 1. So we often have two solutions in a quadratic. Sometimes it can be just one, which is essentially a double solution because you get it twice. There are some rare cases where there are no solutions. Those are quite rare in the GMAT. They do appear in harder questions though, and we'll see those separately. Now, it is worth learning a few formula shortcuts, which are the following, which is the sum of your two solutions, when you add them together, are going to be minus b over a. And that is essentially just taking the result we just saw and seeing it as a shortcut. And we have also this formula here, which is the product of your two solutions is equal to c over a. Okay, so here it's very similar formulas to what we did before. The difference here is we're talking about the solutions. We're not talking about the factor terms. And remember, the difference between the two is a negative sign, which is easy to forget and often prone for causing errors in the GMAT.